Welcome back to NHP. John Zella, James Nichols here with you. Some breaks here and there. We were talking just before we hit record about if we're ready or not, and we hit pause in the conversation so that we could do it here. Are you ready for the season? Like, you're ready to watch hockey again? It's still kind of warm out. We're getting into weird weather season. It's going back and forth. Are you ready? You ready to get back?
I was just telling you, the weather here is so bipolar. It was 90 degrees yesterday, 70 today. I'm like, that's a rapid drop pretty quickly. I'm like not ready to let go of summer. Like I was enjoying my time that I had to myself, but I'm also craving hockey again. Like I miss watching games. I miss, breaking down plays, I just miss everything about hockey right now. So it's like I'm in this weird middle area where I want to do both so bad. So I guess you could say, in a way, in my own way, I'm ready.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were also talking about just having something Islanders to talk about that wasn't
Yeah,
just kind of the rehashed
yeah.
news over and over. I forget what you had said. It was
The
just yeah,
recycled news cycle.
yeah, just recycled news of what was going on or what wasn't going on this summer. So it'll be interesting to kind of look ahead, which is exactly what we're going to do
Yeah.
this episode. Starting off, so we had a couple of Twitter questions we had posted that the other day, and a couple people asked us questions. They were both named John. So this is not my like alter ego's pseudonym thing, and I'm just trying to get extra questions to make us look like we're popular. These are actual people. I guess you can go look for yourself, or maybe it doesn't matter, and you believe us. But the first question we had this um, in our content brief here anyway. But John Filippelli asked, "Do the Islanders make the playoffs?" James, why or why not?
Yes, they do. I'm not even going to hesitate. There's no, this is tough for me, nothing like that. Just straight up, yes. I'm a firm believer that last season was a result of the plethora of obstacles that became too much for the team to overcome by the time they were out of the thick of said obstacles. Add the fact that they'll be the most well rested, and think about this, John. They're going to be the most well rested they've been since losing in the second round of the 2019 playoffs. That was Trotz's first year. They had a normal summer after that, which was shorter than, let's say the teams that didn't make the playoffs or the first round of the playoffs. But that was the last time that they had a normal season, was the 2019 playoffs after they got eliminated in the second round. Add the fact that they're going to have a more mobile blue line. I'm a firm believer that Romanov is going to be a huge upgrade to the back end. I know he's just one player, but it's going to change a lot on how they're going to be able to play. And then add the elite goaltending that they're still going to have, and I think it's going to be even better this year because you see already, Sorokin's already in the Vezina favorite conversation. So I think another year of him is going to be is going to do the Islanders well. And I think that will be enough to get them to the playoffs. But I also think that last season was underwhelming and this is something that we've spoken about ad nauseum, but we'll rehash it just shortly for the sake of this question. Plenty of forwards who played underwhelming last season. I think they'll come into this, training camp, into the season with chips on their shoulders, and there's a lot of bounce back potential for a lot of players here. And you're sitting here and saying a lot of these things have to go right, but also so many things went wrong last year that there's too much pride and too much heart in that locker room that I can't see them not bouncing back. And I'm looking at guys like Palmieri, Beauvillier, Wallstrom. So we're not talking about a bad team here. That's the thing. Like, we're talking about a team that was good for 3 out of the last 4 seasons. So many things got in their way last year, and some self-inflicted, some that they couldn't control. And the thing that I also want to talk about, or the question I want to ask rather, is, look at Vegas. Why aren't people asking the same questions about them when in reality they were in the same spot last year, right? they missed the playoffs because of so much that was out of their control, right? Nobody can control how many injuries they faced last season. Yet they're still, according to like the Vegas odds, favorites to make the playoffs. So why are we not having that same conversation about the Golden Knights?
I think on its face, I can understand that comparison. Vegas, and they're gonna go into the season with some goalie problems. I'm not sure that
Major goalie problems.
major goalie problems, and they just signed. I say just, with air quotes, like when Aiden Hill. I don't know. I don't know that he's necessarily the answer, even when some of the other goalies, Briswell, whatever, comes back, and they're definitely in an uphill battle. They lose a Pacioretty. They do have an Eichel who is now going to be probably the healthiest he's been in a number of years. Um, it's been, I don't know what the vibe is on that team. Like I don't know how they're going into this season necessarily. I can't remember. I'm gonna look up the roster as I'm speaking here. I think it's a little bit different of a conversation just based on the roster, what Vegas has done to their roster versus what the Islanders have done. Um, that might be where kind of people are choosing them.
Yeah, it's like the only sheer difference here is the Islanders don't have, and this is, I don't even know if you can say they don't have, but they don't have a Jack Eichel, right? Is Matt Barzal maybe close to being able to be a Jack Eichel? You would think that this would be the season he breaks out to be that kind of a star. Um, do they have a Mark Stone? Do they have an Alex Petrangelo? And I get all that, but I don't feel like they're far from it.
I'll put something in your on your side of the coin on this one and say that the Islanders are definitely more of a full team than
Yes.
Vegas is. They
Yeah.
don't Islanders absolutely, and this is what you could say about most teams versus the Islanders, most top end teams versus the Islanders. Tampa versus the Islanders in the two conference finals. Against most teams, they didn't, even against the Flyers, in that 7-game series. I can't remember which, was it 2 years ago, I guess, um, during the bubble in Toronto. The Islanders didn't really have an answer for like Voracek, Giroux, right? Like they didn't have that 1-to-1. Maybe Barzell with one of them, but the combination, like Eberle was streaky. You just had a bunch of players, maybe Brock Nelson, like so up the middle they were good, but you didn't really have like, no one was choosing two Islanders over Giroux and Voracek. And that would have been pretty, like, just on their face, what they can produce, all that kind of stuff. But as a team, that's where the Islanders shine.
Yeah,
And
top to bottom, they're deeper.
yeah, I mean, we can argue about whether or not there's too many bloated contracts in the middle, but it makes them a deep team. And we've jokingly said, or I've jokingly said at least, they have 3 second lines, and they may continue to have that, but that's a lot more than other teams, right? If you can, depending on what the lineup is, and I think we're going to talk about that at least a little bit later, and touch on it in our Lane Lambert question segment, whatever. I think that's where the Islanders can really get over some other teams where, yeah, their second or even third line, they're still coming at you with that veracity and that energy, and it's just slightly different, but the skill is still there. If it's not Barzell, it's Nelson who could score 37 goals. That's not really a drop off, right? These lines that can do that, if Palmieri and Pajot, if that's part of the third line with Parise, that's still a really good third line. You still have two guys there, um, really three guys there that can score 15, 20 goals. Like they're still capable of that. They have tons of energy. It's really hard to argue with that. So I'm in more in your camp than when you first said that about Vegas. But I think the argument against the Islanders in this case, or rather for Vegas, I don't know that for Vegas means against the Islanders, but why the odds makers would do that is just like they're due. They're going to come back. They have some goalie
Right.
issues. I liken
Right.
them a lot to Washington in the East. They have some
Yeah.
goalie issues. They have a lot of players at the top. Backstrom is also going to be an issue, but I don't even know that they have quite the depth that Vegas has. So I don't. Obviously, they're in
No.
different conference and that. I wouldn't really bet against Ovechkin the same way as I wouldn't bet against Sidney Crosby and the Penguins.
True.
So Vegas is a lot like that. I mean, they're a lot like the Penguins too. A lot of top end goalies are questionable. Back end is whatever. Vegas does have a decent back end. Pietrangelo, Martinez, Theodore McNabb. That's really not a bad top four if
Yeah.
that's
You
what
didn't
they're
even
rolling
mention
out there.
Haig. I like Haig a lot. He's on the where he should. I think he's listed on their IR right now, but
Yes.
he'll be healthy to start the year.
According to Cat Friendly, unsigned, which is a different thing. But
yeah, I think he's still unsigned. Actually, you might be right.
And they are at the top. They have $10 million to figure out, and not really sure how they're gonna clear that. But back,
Oh yeah, they got so much cap issue right now.
yeah. So that's interesting, and I do want to make mention that like I really don't want to. And I was thinking about this. I was listening to 32 Thoughts today, like my first hockey podcast in weeks. And they started talking about like, oh, this player and he's an RFA, and I was like, there's nothing I would want to talk about less right now than like, oh, this player's gonna be an RFA, and like, is he trade bait, and like, what are they gonna do with the thing, and which team's over the cap, and who can the Islanders snag on the way?
No, it's September.
We
We're
will.
past that.
We're not only past that, we will report on it and analyze it when it happens. I refuse in September to speculate this after a whole summer of it is nothing could be less worth my time.
Okay, but the real question here is, who are the Islanders trading for at the trade deadline when they obviously are in the hunt?
I almost threw up in my mouth. I'm so over that idea. And so I you know what? I had to stop myself. I was cooking dinner, listening to 32 Thoughts, and I'm like, Jeff Merrick's doing his thing, and I started thinking like, oh, this player on the Islanders and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no. I stopped myself. I was like, I don't even want to have this thought in my head. I forgot exactly what it was. I was like, I don't even want this thought in my head later on the podcast in fear of saying it on accident. So we will not be doing that. I don't want to hear about nope. JT Miller. I don't want to hear none of that. I think that's what they were talking about. That's what got me thinking. Nope. Don't want to talk about any of that. No potential. I don't even care. I want to go. We're gonna go through September. We're gonna do this episode, and whatever happens next. This is the roster we have. We're dealing with it. We'll see what happens at camp. Rookies, blah blah blah. This is what we're looking at. So if you're looking for that, I'm really sorry. That's just not what we're gonna do. We are exhausted.
No. Yeah.
By that, even having taken a little bit of a break and all, I'm exhausted by. I guess we did Twitter Spaces, so we like kind of did everything in August. We really didn't get as much of a break as we thought, but just as a little disclaimer, like we really don't need to do that.
We satisfied our appetite and then some there, so we're gonna leave it, digest a little bit. But one question I had for you actually was, I don't know if you saw the question on circulating on Twitter today, a bit of a sidebar here. Sure. But you mentioned Brock Nelson before, and it just triggered a reminder in my brain. There was like a little bit of conversation on whether Nelson can have a repeat performance this season. What are your thoughts there on? I mean, obviously he scored 37 goals, first time he's eclipsed 30. But what are your thoughts there on a repeat performance from Nelson?
I think he's consistently been like a 25 goal guy. 25, 30 goals.
Yeah.
I don't know about 37. That has more to do with the players around him.
I think actually, if I'm not mistaken, the question was more geared towards, can he hit 40?
I don't know. Like I said, maybe I'm just in like not speculation mode at all. I mean, this is more just like having fun, and
this is analyzing actual.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like,
I think he's a 25. I mean, if there was going to be an outlier season, it sucks that it was in a down year for the entire team, and he kind of pops off a little bit. He's consistently been a 25, 30 goal guy, or 25 goals. He's been really consistent. At least had 18 goals in 56 games in the shortened season. He had 26 the year before that in 68 games. He's on a really good pace, and that was his best pace of his career at that point. So. Yeah, I mean, I think he's a 25, 30 goal guy and more in that 25, literally 25, 26 range.
Yeah.
Possibly more. Yeah, I mean, I
The
think I
one,
don't know about 40. Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I think that also
yeah,
assumes that um I mean, I guess he had 37 goals and there wasn't really anyone around him that racked up 30 assists, right? Like it's Lee or Nelson or Bailey, like there wasn't anyone really like that. So I guess he can kind of do it on his own. And he didn't have like a
yeah.
ton of hat tricks. He had one. I don't know how many 2-goal games he had, but 37
It,
in 72 is really fucking good.
I think he had
So
a 4 goal game, if I'm not mistaken.
all right, a hat trick plus one, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd firmly put him as a 25 goal guy. I mean, like he's pretty much money in the bank for that. Can he do 30 twice? Let's do that. I'm not worried about 40. Can he do 32 seasons in a row?
yeah.
From
I'm down
there,
with 30.
yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to downplay anything either. I think it's just I think he
Well,
could be a
here's the
third. I
thing.
think he could be based on two shortened seasons where he was on pace for what it looked like more than 30 or around 30. And then
Yeah,
37 last year. Yeah, I mean, let's get to 30 first, and then we'll talk about 40. Let him do 32 years in a row, and then
yeah.
how many games are left? Can he score 10 more goals in 25 games?
No, I hear
It,
you. The thing I look at is his shooting percentage, right? 14.9 in 2019-20 when he scored 26 and 68, 14.9 when 18 and 56 last season or 2 seasons ago, and then last season 21.6
oh,
his shooting percentage.
that's not sustainable.
So that's
He
like an
has to
outlier
shoot.
for regression there.
Yeah, I mean, I think what anyone would tell you is the whole team needs to shoot the puck more.
Yeah,
This is like a Tage Thompson type thing, right? That they just got
yeah.
signed 7 years,
Cha-ching.
$50 million. Yeah, cha-ching. Um, and you can question that contract in Buffalo Sabres and blah 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 all you want, but he shot more than he's like ever shot in his career. So that's you need volume. You need to shoot the puck.
Yeah.
And how many shots did Nelson have last season?
Um, he had 171 in 72 games.
And is that an increase
That's
versus other years?
that's 50 more than last season, but in about 15 less games. He had 175 and 68 in 2019-20. So he's sitting relatively close, right? Like 171, 175, 181, 138, 173. Like
Yeah,
you could say he sits in the 150 to 170 range in
yeah.
shots.
I think he's if he can shoot the puck more and stay at 15%, that's fine.
Oh
Then
my
he
God, he
might
had 190 in 2014-15. Why don't I remember that?
that was a long first of all, it was a long time ago. So we can
Yeah.
start there. Um that was a down year for the Islanders, or was that one of the years? No, that was one of the years that the Islanders made the playoffs 2 years in a row, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
That was 2015.
yeah, okay, and then the
That was
next year they beat
against
Florida.
Florida. Yeah.
No, no, 2016 was Florida. 15,
No, I'm
16
saying
was
the next.
Florida. The
No, I'm
next
saying
season.
the next year was Florida. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was like one of those 2 years in a row where they lost to the Lightning in 2015
Yeah.
in the first round, and they lost to the Lightning in the second round the next year. Um, yeah, I mean, like he's going to regress in the shooting percentage, and that's fine as long as he shoots the puck more. So I think he shot as like 170 shots around that has been where he's found a lot of success in kind of that range. There's a lot like Thomas Greiss where he has like a sweet spot on like games played and all that.
Yeah.
Like 43 games, you win like 39 of them was crazy. Not quite that good, but you know what I mean. Yeah, as long as he can do that, I mean, I shoot at 15%, maybe have 20 more shots by the end of the season. He missed 10 games too. Let's not forget that. So
Yeah.
he could have easily been a 40 goal guy. Missing 10 games at 3 goals, that's super. That's not that big of a deal, especially at shooting at almost
No.
22%. Yeah, and he didn't really have any like crazy ice time. Um, he had 11 power play goals. That's not gonna hurt. And that might be where he
No.
really can get his cookies this year. If he's gonna get over that 30 goal mark or hit the 30 goal mark 2 seasons in a row, that's certainly
Yeah.
gonna be where he does that. Um, I'll keep it short on my end for whether or not the Islanders make the playoffs. I think they're a second wild card team. I think they're going to be fighting um, with Pittsburgh and Washington for that second wild card spot. Last season, both divisions had 4 teams make the postseason. Um, I suspect that'll be the same again. Who did you have? So we're going to do predictions as well in this episode. So this is like a full season preview kind of thing. Um, what order do you have the teams in for Metro Division?
So I think, and I thought this about the Hurricanes before the Pacioretty news that he was going to be out for like 6 months, but I still think that they're the strongest team in the division. So I'll have them first. I think the Rangers take another step forward this year. This is a big year for them because they have a bunch of contracts that are coming off the books, or that need to be resigned for next season, and it's going to be a big summer for them next summer, in order to keep their big names together. So this is going to be a year where I think that they try to make a big push to get it done with this group. So I think that they're going to be second. I have Pittsburgh third. I although I didn't love them re-signing Malkin to 4 years, Letang to 6, but I still think that they're a stronger team than Washington, who I have later. So I put Pittsburgh third, and then I have the Islanders fourth. I think that that's either going to be wild card 1 or 2 there, like you said, and then after that, Washington, who I think could easily flip places with New Jersey, who I think is going to be much improved. So fifth is Washington, sixth is the Devils. To me, I think that they could jump Washington. For me, I think Washington is Ovechkin. Backstrom's going to be hurt, so it's Ovechkin, it's Backstrom. No, I'm sorry, Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Carlson, and Oshie. Right, Tom Wilson.
And
You could
Oshie
say,
and Oshie is still kind of like.
and then
I'd
after
want him
that,
on our team, but I don't think he's a huge
sure.
threat.
But after that, I think it's a large drop off, right? And you don't know what you're going to get with Darcy Kemper. When he's healthy, he's good, but is he going to be healthy? That's the question, right? Whole new goaltending system there, right? Vanacek's gone, Samsonov's gone, so it's Kemper, and I don't know who the backup is right now. Honestly, I can't remember off the top of my head. I think that Washington is far less good than they were last year. Um, you know, they still have Alex Ovechkin, so we'll see. But I could see New Jersey jumping Washington. Then I have Columbus seventh, and Philly eighth. Philly is, I don't know what's going on there, but the one team to me here is the Devils. They could be, are they going to take a huge step and maybe leap everybody this year and push for the playoffs? Maybe. The other team, look, Columbus got Johnny Gaudreau. Could they surprise us all? Maybe, but I know that they have Cole Sillinger, who's going to be in the lineup, Yegor Chinnikov, Kent Johnson. Those are all rookies or second-year players, really young team, very young team. They're going to be very good. I just don't think they're there yet. Johnny Gaudreau doesn't hurt, but I think that that's like a long-term thing there.
I think that they get together as a team, and that's a lot of, again, where the Islanders sit versus other teams. This is a team that's been together longer as this much of a unit than other teams. They've been together longer than a lot of other teams.
Right.
Gaudreau, obviously that's going to help, but they've a really young forward group, average age 26. They do have Voracek, who's still really good. Nyquist is really good. They still have Patrick Laine. Forget about that. Gaudreau, Laine,
yeah, he just signed for 4 years.
Yeah, and he's going to be around. So Gaudreau, Laine, and Roslovic's no joke. They're they definitely could. It just, can they come together? Cole Sillinger, He's still really young. He's 18. Um, can they come together as a team? Can they make all that work? Um, I think the good part about a good Metro division is that um, it helps rack up losses for every team. So it kind of keeps that
Yeah.
cushion for everybody. As long as the Islanders can kind of win a couple more than the other teams. I know that's like obvious, like analysis. Like you can yell at me in the comments, but they don't need to do Islanders don't need to do anything crazy. Like I said about last season, there was 1 or 2 wins a month, like one win a month more, maybe 2 in 1 month different. Like you're not talking you're talking about really small difference in what their results were. If that also meant other teams were beating other teams in front of them and Washington lost some games, the last wild card spot could be in the low 90s. It really depends. I don't think every team like last year is 100 plus.
Yeah. No,
I
I
think
hear
the
that.
division with New Jersey being a little bit better, with Columbus being a little bit better, it really just depends on the rest of the division. Ottawa is going to be better as well.
Oh yeah.
Um, I don't know about
Detroit.
like yeah, Detroit's going to be much better. So you don't really have like you kind of expect Buffalo every year to like, all right, they can't be that bad again. So you kind of have like Philly and Montreal, maybe Buffalo. Can the Sens put it together? Can Columbus put it together? Can New Jersey put it together? You're kind of looking at some of the top teams to fall a little bit. Again, Pittsburgh, Washington, who knows? They can easily switch. Pittsburgh's had really awful goaltending luck with health, and then even when they're healthy, they haven't been particularly good. Um, so between Washington and Pittsburgh, that's a complete toss up to me. The Rangers went through a little bit of an overhaul as well. I mean, they lost guys like Vetrano that were really vital to them during that playoff run last year, but they gain a Trocheck. They lose a Strom, but they gain. I can't remember off the top of my head. I just had it. Um, like they've had some players in and out, and I think their goaltending, if they can it carry them again, is the question. Their back end's going to be good. Truba, Fox, Lindgren, Keandre Miller is great. That's a great top four. Um, so on defense and in goal, they're good. They've solidified themselves up the middle considerably with Trocheck. Can the rest of it put it together? I kind of agree with you. They're definitely a top team in the division, but it's a little more equal. It's more
Oh yeah.
equal now than it is. Carolina and New Jersey may be ahead of the fray, and you're really just dealing with really um, 3 and 4, the
You mean
third
New
and fourth
York, not
spots.
New Jersey. Carolina and New York.
Yes, Carolina and New York. So I was looking at New Jersey, Carolina, New York, and then it's really Pittsburgh, New York, Washington, and again, who could surprise and who can really fall off. People have been saying about Pittsburgh and Washington forever, like they're in it until they're not.
Yeah.
So is it finally the year where they fall off and don't make the playoffs with Crosby or Ovechkin?
You mentioned the Rangers goaltending and I obviously they're not as good as the Islanders goaltending is because again it's been spoken about as probably the best tandem in the NHL right now, but they got Yaro Halak to back up Igor Shesterkin, and that's a pretty decent backup. He's not a 1B. He's definitely a backup to Shesterkin. But even after that, they also brought in Louis Domingue, who had an excellent playoffs last season. Do you remember that? Like he came
Yeah,
in a pinch and really helped out. Who was it? The Lightning? No. Who did he?
Pittsburgh,
Pittsburgh. Yes, thank you. I don't know why I
because the
couldn't remember that.
spicy pork
Yeah, that
in
was
the
it. That was it. Thank you. But he did so well, and like, look,
yeah.
he's not a starting goaltender by any means, but like, there's some good depth there. So, I'm not saying it would be ideal if Shesterkin goes down for the Rangers, and they'd be like, oh, it's fine, we have Halak and Domingue, but they could at least survive.
I think that's right, and they're gonna ride Shesterkin as long as they can. There, that's
Yeah,
just going to be the
exactly.
name of the game. I think the Islanders have that luxury where they can split things up. Sorokin is behind considerably, like enough to notice behind Shesterkin in at least games played in the NHL. So while they're both pretty even for the most part. Shesterkin has that games played edge and has proved that consistency. So this is Sorokin's year to really prove it. And it's really Varlamov's year to prove it too. Like we've said before, maybe he comes back, and we're not going to go into all his detail and whatever. And it's possible he comes back on a cheap deal, and it's a prove it year for him too. So I think
Yeah.
that bodes well for the Islanders. They both goalies still need to prove something to themselves, to the team, to other teams in the league. If you're Varlamov, possibly after the season, so I think that's something that's a huge advantage for the Islanders. I definitely agree. One way or another, their back end is improved. It's certainly younger, and that's great. That's what we were asking for all last season. So that's awesome. We're gonna get to some of the specifics on who some of the other players might be in a few minutes.
Quick trivia: How many
Quick
more
trivia.
games played? How many more games played does Igor Shesterkin have than Ilya Sorokin?
It's under 50. 35.
Final answer.
29. Final answer.
Okay, that was better. 26.
Okay, yeah, that's in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Not
not a crazy amount. And consider also that Sorokin, although maybe Shesterkin caught up this offseason, but Sorokin did have a number of games played in the playoffs
Oh yeah.
the year before. So it's maybe that's a wash, but yeah, that battle is fantastic. I'm really happy that both teams. It's going to be. I hope the Islanders are good, and the Rangers kind of continue on their path, so that both teams are good. Like, it's so much more exciting in sports when it's like when the New York teams are doing good, and then they finally play against each other. It makes it way more exciting.
Love it.
We're gonna take a quick break, a little bit of water. You're going to listen to some great ads. DraftKings, new sponsor, Raycon. James got him in right now. Unreal. Make sure you use the THPN link in the description. We'll make sure we have it. I have to find it, but I'll put it in there. So we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be back with questions facing the team.
This episode of Nassam and Hockey is brought to you by DraftKings. Football fans, the first Sunday of the NFL season is here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is giving new customers a can't-miss offer to celebrate the return of the NFL season. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. And as an added bonus for Week 1, everyone can experience the thrill of DraftKings Early Win promotion. It's simple. Bet on an NFL team to win. If your team leads by 10 at any point during the game, you get paid instantly, even if your team loses. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code THPN to get $200 in free bets instantly when you place a $5 bet this Sunday. That's code THPN only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Nassam and Hockey is also brought to you by Raycon. Lately, John and I have been listening to a lot of hockey podcasts, and it's been great. One reason it's been so great to listen to? Well, because we use Raycon wireless earbuds to do it. Raycon's everyday earbuds look, feel, and sound better than ever. With optimized gel tips for the perfect in-ear fit, these earbuds are so comfortable and they will not budge, trust me. Raycons give you 8 hours of playtime and a 32-hour battery life. Raycons are priced just right. You get quality audio at half the price of other premium audio brands. It's no wonder Raycon's everyday earbuds have over 50,000 5-star reviews. The Raycon wireless earbuds John and I both use offer 3 customizable sound profiles, earbud tap functions, noise isolation, and my personal favorite feature, the awareness mode that lets you hear outside of the earbuds when they're in your ears while listening to songs, podcasts, video games, whatever you're using your Raycon wireless earbuds for. Not only have I been using my Raycon wireless earbuds to listen to podcasts, but I've also been using them to listen to music, play video games, watch TV shows, pretty much anything audio related that I need. So go to buyraycon.com/THPN today to get 15% off your Raycon order. That's buyraycon.com/THPN to score 15% off. buyraycon.com/THPN.
Okay, so I wrote an article the other day. 3 questions facing the team, and I thought it was so good that we should talk about it on the podcast. Little double dip here, but I think, and there probably are some other questions too. Like as we said in the first half, can Nelson repeat or at least hit 30 goals again? I'm sure there's some other ones, Sorokin, Varlamov, yada yada. I'm sure we can do that, but I think first and foremost, the roster is set in like 98%, 99% set. But the man behind the bench, and some of the associates are a little bit different going into this season. And that's a big question, I think, for a lot of fans. Something that some fans are kind of putting some bad energy out there and saying that that'll be one of Lamoriello's biggest mistakes if the Islanders don't do well. They're going to immediately point to Lambert. It'll be hard not to, frankly, if it's the same roster and walks like a duck, talks like a duck, and all of a sudden, what's different here? You can easily point to one person as far as that's concerned. And that might even save Lamoriello's job, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. I know it's easy. We do that every time. I do that every time. Lane Lambert. Question from John Mac Isaac. Does Lambert experiment with the lines? And to what degree can he do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I feel like the answer has to be he has to try, right?
What does that look like?
Can you bring back the same lineup as last season that just couldn't get out of their own way, right? Are you going to put Beauvillier back with Nelson and Bailey, the Killer B line that at one point, owned that name and then largely just couldn't, aside from Nelson, find the back of the net. Palmieri with, and it's tricky because he was up and down the lineup. Really, the question and answer starts and begins with who's going to play with Matthew Barzal. And after you figure that out, all the pieces fall into place.
That's what I wrote. After that's chosen, that's going to dictate the rest of the lineup. And at first, Correct. What I wrote and I edited myself that depending on what happens on the first line dictates the second line. But I really went down, as we discussed over the summer, it's possible Palmieri gets a shot on that first line again, and that Wahlstrom doesn't.
I don't put it past him.
Yeah, that Wahlstrom doesn't make it on the first line.
Yeah.
And we switched positions a little bit. I'm going put a line together of 25 and under. Beauvillier, Barzal, Wahlstrom. You know what? And just go with the kids, and then you have three veteran lines after that.
I'm so back and forth on it.
Give them the
today,
rope.
I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
My instinct is to just say, give them the rope. Try it in training camp. Let them get a few games. Eventually, I think to answer John's question, yes, he'll experiment. It just cannot be for very long. Eventually,
okay, that's well said.
Eventually, they just need to stick with something until it's really not working. And I'm not talking about way out of a playoff spot. They've lost 10 games in a row, and it's like, oh, I guess we should change something. But like, it's early in the season. Like, let it work itself out. But you can't just keep changing and keep changing. It's something Barzal had said, where just like there was no consistency in the lines. Other players have said that too. So like you got to eventually choose something.
So the thing for me is we saw with Trotz, right? And look, I'm not a Hall of Fame coach, and I thought he was fantastic, and nothing bad to say about him. I think he should have been fired? Maybe not, but it's what it is. The one thing he did hesitate to do though was, change the lineup. And it was just really Matthew Barzal who didn't have steady line mates, but like the second line stayed together most of the time. The third line stayed together most of the time. Like it was interesting to me to see, Josh Bailey not having a good game and Oliver Wahlstrom also not having a good game, but Josh Bailey getting 19 minutes the next night and Oliver Wahlstrom sitting on the bench or in the press box. That didn't make sense to me. The thing with Lambert, and I think one of his strengths and one of the reasons why he's now behind the bench is because he has the history and the track record of being successful in developing these younger guys. Looking at Evgeny Kuznetsov, looking at John Carlson, who he helped develop, looking at Tom Wilson, who, when Lane Lambert got there with Barry Trotz, turned him into a 20-goal scorer after he was just largely a fourth-line goon.
And now he's a first-line goon.
And now he's a first-line goon, but he scores you 20, 25 goals, and, you're not going to complain about that as a Washington Capitals fan. So that's the thing, right? Like, the major difference here needs to be, is Lane Lambert going to develop the youth and give them the opportunity? And like you said, which was extremely well said, he needs to find the happy medium of giving them the opportunity to work out the kinks on the ice in the games, but also not letting it go so long that it hurts the team and puts them in a hole.
Yeah, I think again, my instinct is to go with like a really young first line and then go veteran the rest of the way. I think that's totally fine. And then give people a shorter leash. You can switch around Wahlstrom and Palmieri and then have Beauvillier, Barzal, Palmieri. I don't think that's a bad line.
No.
That's not a particularly strong defensive line, but the rest of your lineup is. Like, I think that's where the balance and like some of those things, you have to, one of your lines has to be a scoring line. Like, they're going to be, you can't just have every line be balanced like that. I get it. It worked for a long time, but if you didn't add any offense to your roster, you have to put more of the offensive players together and create something.
You don't need to play defense when you have the puck in the attacking zone, so it's
that's entire. Yes. I mean, there's definitely something to that. I wonder what, I think it's really tough when you had really like the fourth line. We don't really need to discuss that, although we'd like to see Johnson get a few more games in for Martin and let him keep I'd rather Martin be ready. They should split the games, frankly. They should Roland Mellison and Billy Smith it, and then for the playoffs, just put Martin in. Like let him stay rested for the playoffs and let him do his thing. Don't if you're going to make the playoffs, it's going to be because that fourth line is really ready to go and that energy is there and that identity is there. So split the games or like something like that, 60-40, whatever. Get Johnson some minutes on your payroll, like get him in some games and rest Martin a little bit. What's hard for me is Pajot and Palmieri played well together and Lee and Nelson played well together. So then it really left me with Bailey, Beauvillier, Wahlstrom for those last three spots. Parise being with, again, as a veteran third line, that'd be a really good line. Pajot, Parise, Palmieri. Also just the, P3 line. I think that's a great nickname. So P cubed or whatever. We need more. We need better. Yeah, we need
third power.
Yes, we need some better nicknames on the island. That's certainly not it. I'm not advocating for that, but there's potential. Somebody could figure it out. So, like, you really only have three spots to work with. So you're kind of just rearranging deck chairs at that point. Like, where do these three players fit in? Maybe Palmieri, if you want to add in a fourth one just to, like, get more of a veteran presence on that first line. I just don't know if that's necessary. I'd rather just go with the youth. The rest of your lineup is defensively sound. They'll do their thing. It's pretty much set it and forget it. A line of Lee, Nelson, Bailey, and then the P cubed line isn't nothing's going on. Nothing's going wrong there. Don't start the first line in the defensive zone. That is your only, as a coach, that is your only job at that point.
Yeah.
Let them do their thing. No,
I'm with you with the first line mixture too. Like start with Beauvillier, with Barzal and Wahlstrom. And I say Beauvillier on the first line because I go back to that conversation we had with Shanna Goldman, right? Where she was like, if you're going to have this player play to his best potential, put him with your best players. And that would be with Matthew Barzal. And is that also Oliver Wahlstrom? We'll see. He maybe
just shoot the puck. Just get him the goddamn puck. Beauvillier go to the net. Barzal sets him up. Go. It's like
And that's the thing. They could both.
It's almost a cheat code. Like that line
They
can
can both
almost be a
go,
cheat
go,
code.
go, go, go. Right. That's the thing.
Or,
Bavilier and Barzell can
I think
skate
that's
circles around everyone, and
yeah.
all
They
Wallstrom
can.
has to do is get open and shoot.
They need to push the pace, and then Wallstrom just needs to find an open space.
Yeah. So I go back to that, and I think you're right. Put those three together, and if it doesn't work, Palmieri, I think, would be very successful in Wallstrom's spot as well on that line. So,
and then you can, if you wanted Bailey, Barzell, Palmieri, that's also not a bad line. That could work. I don't think it doesn't roll off and scream offense, but it could work. Bailey's a setup guy. If Barzell can shoot the puck more, if Palmieri can find his stick early in the season, that's not bad either. And then you have the killer that you have Lee, Nelson, Bavilier, also a really good line. They've played together. They found success last season as well. Parise, Peugeot, Wallstrom with two veterans. That works for you defensively, and I think that could work together. Peugeot found some success with the righty on that side, and somebody that can shoot the puck like that. Wallstrom might need to find his legs because Peugeot and Parise can move. Maybe collectively, will on the same level as Bailey and Bavilier. So in either situation, Wallstrom's got to find his skates this year. He's got to pick up the pace.
I don't know if you saw pictures on Instagram of Oliver Wallstrom recently. Kid is ripped up.
Yeah.
So maybe he's going to be a little quicker this season. But here's an interesting proposition somebody had mentioned to me. I forget where and I forget who. So if you're listening to this, feel free to take credit for it. What about and I don't know how I feel about this yet. I'm still mulling it over. Dropping Parise down to the fourth line. And at some point, we have to know what Kieffer Bellows is. Put him on that third line.
So I think this is where I would prefer. I'm gonna put a pin in that. I don't like doing that. Like I guess if Clutterbuck or something or somebody's not working, they need a rest again. I think that's where Bellows and Johnson can really come in. It's who needs a break. Splitting some time.
That's the thing. Bellows' role, like he signed a $1.2 million deal. He didn't sign a 1 year $750K. He signed a $1.2 million deal. Why?
He needs to find his moment, and this is like I was about to say. I think Lambert needs to do a better job than Trotz in so much as if somebody comes out of the lineup. So say the lineup is Bavilier, Barzell, Wallstrom, yada, 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 what we said. If Bavilier goes down, you don't stick Bellows on the first line. You don't just guy's down, stick him in there. I was like, for a Hall of Fame coach, that was always curious decisions for me.
Especially wasn't when Wallstrom continued to get 9 minutes.
Right. So it wasn't like, oh, okay, like how can I keep the lineup balanced? And you're like, oh, I wonder why this isn't working. I wonder why this guy Bellows, who hasn't skated in 3 weeks in an NHL game, just can't keep up with Barzell. It's so weird. I don't. What are you talking about? Like at that point, you gotta move. That's where you're gonna experiment. If you're really gonna be doing that. If someone isn't playing well, somebody gets injured, then you gotta you gotta move some stuff around a little bit. Bavilier goes down. He's down for 2 games. He's got a pulled thing. All right, you move the lines around a little bit. You move Parise up, who could play, has some experience with him. More likely is you're moving someone like Bailey up from that second line in Bavilier's spot and moving Parise up with Lee and Nelson and sticking Bellows with Palmieri and Peugeot. Right, like that's a little more strategic to me. And maybe none of that makes any sense, but it didn't seem like there was any thought. It was like, oh, okay, this player's down. You stick Bellows in there. And you're wondering why he wasn't having success. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. He's a middle six player. You're putting him in a position. Yeah, he scored, he had 2 goals against the Devils that one time. It was the Devils. That's not, I'm not pointing to that as like, oh, look at this kid's potential. Right. Yeah, he had some vision there. I guess great. he needs to put himself in better position. So leaving him on the second or third line and moving some players around that have played with Barzal, again, you have to make sure you're continuing to complement your first line and putting the players, not only putting the players there that will succeed with Barzal, but the players that Barzal will succeed with. So you have to be able to, that balance is really tricky. So I want, this is what I want. This is, great kind of circling back to Lambert. That's kind of what I want to see out of him. Something different than Trotz.
Yeah.
Other than like literally the strategy and like maybe having a really young first line and giving them a little more rope, but giving the entire offense a little bit more rope. As like just an on ice strategy, whatever that means. I don't really know there's a million ways to go about that. The defense will be obviously a little bit better. We'll talk about that in a second. But that's something I'd like to see out of Lambert is if you're going to be putting these players in, if Parise goes down, don't put Johnson in there. Like that's what we were seeing last year. Like something would happen. You're like, what? Why is this player here?
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense. It was easier on the back end. I felt like Trotz understood that. It was like, Mayfield went down, Grant Hutton. And you were like, Grant Hutton, is he really? Okay, I guess he's pretty much Scott Mayfield. That makes a whole lot of sense. Like you can just kind of like, okay, I understand that isn't exactly 1-for-1, but that was pretty close. On the forward lines, I just didn't see it. And I think we defended Trotz at the time, and I think it's still right that he's only able to deal with what he has. Like he can't just pull out Johnny Gaudreau and be like, haha, look at this. Somebody got hurt. He's on the first line now. Like it doesn't exist. There was no one in the AHL that was just going to like fairy dust their way in and be like, look, it's some great player. It just like didn't exist for the Islanders.
Right.
At the same time, thinking about it a little bit more, if you are going to play Bellows, I think you have to put him in the right spot. It's just not in the first line.
Yeah.
And he just like over and over for 2 seasons, you were sticking Bellows on the first line next to Barzal going, I wonder why it just won't work like that one game against the Devils.
No, but I do remember doing the research on it. I think I wrote about it at some point that Bellows had some pretty good analytics with Brock Nelson. Am I saying he should be a second line player? No, but when he's put in the position to maybe be in the offensive zone a little bit more, then he starts to look a little bit better, right? Obviously, the outlier is his defense, but I don't know, like he signs the contract and his comments at the press conference were like, I want to be an impact player. I know I can play every night. And that's, what I'm looking to bring next season. Like, obviously that's just, that's just players talking about like, yeah, I signed a contract. I'm excited, but it's a prove it deal. Yeah, so if you're going to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk.
I think he's really just battling, like just without having seen anyone skate yet. He's really just battling Bailey and Parise at the outset. If I had to guess,
and Wallstrom.
Yeah, I mean, you'd prefer to give someone like Wallstrom, who's young, a little more leash, right? That's kind of our whole point. Like if 2 players are struggling and their names are Wallstrom and Bailey, keep Wallstrom in there. You got to get him over that hump. If he needs a break, like mentally, yes, take him out. I think that's perfectly fine. You don't stick Bellows on that first line, as I said, though. Like figure something out. Work that. Your head coach in the NHL. Figure that part out. I could do your job for you, but I think at the outset, it's kind of like guys like Parise, who's 38, who can still motor, and he played all 82 games last year, and he didn't look worse for it. I mean, maybe he doesn't need the break, but it might be players like that where who's struggling, how can he get in? He's got to earn a spot. He has to same thing with how we discussed the division and who's not making the playoffs, right? It's Pittsburgh or Washington. Who's not making the playoffs? I think Pittsburgh has a better chance than Washington just based on depth. Okay, same thing with the offense. Who is he beating out? Who is Bellows beating out on that roster?
Yeah.
That remains to be seen. It would be incredible to me to see him in the opening night lineup. Unless somebody's injured, it just doesn't. He's simply depth that the organization knows, and that's him and Johnson are a better bet than random guy at 1.2.
Yeah, that's a good point.
aggravatingly so, because there were other players to be had at 1.5 or 1.2, and we talked about them, and I've since forgotten because it doesn't matter. But that's kind of where you want to, like you could have had a Sonny Milano be in that spot and really push a Parise, a Bavillier at that point, right? Sonny, like that's a different middle six, but like has potential. That's where you could have offered somebody 1.5 for 1 year if you really were going to do that.
Yeah.
And really push the top half of your lineup, and have that creativity and not bring it back a guy like Bellows. And if you're just going to like let Bellows walk, at least you have another pretty sure an RFA after 1 year in Sonny Milano.
I think he's 26, so I think he wouldn't be, but you could be right. I'm not sure.
He's a 2014 pick. So he might be 26 at this point. Depending on how
now.
Or now he's a UFA, right? So you lost RFA.
Oh well, there's also that if you if you get let go as an RFA and you sign with somebody else, I think you become an RFA again after signing. There's like a weird rule.
I'm not going to pretend to understand any of that,
yeah.
But either way, like, all right. So you're 25th. When did Bells get drafted?
2016.
Let your 2016 draft pick walk. Bring in the 2014 one with a lot more potential. That's shown a lot more. Again, we're rehashing shit like we're recycling. Yeah. But like my point is, you're talking about the contract in 1.2. If that was really a concern for them, like if that's what they were really thinking, forget about what Bellows signed and his perspective on it, because he's got to fucking prove it.
Right.
I don't give a shit. So, yeah, I don't care what he signed for. You still got to prove it. I think that's the entire lineup. If Bellows comes in and Palmieri is playing like shit and Bellows starts scoring some goals, guess who's sitting? $6 million player. I super don't care. But like if that's what Lamoriello is really concerned about, like that critical thinking for me is just like is when I hit myself over the head. Like I don't understand I don't get what he was thinking there. And it's
funny
though
confusing. We said that, like, oh, who's Bellows competition against? It's Parise and it's Bailey. For me, Zach Parise, if you have to, I don't know, shoot that guy's leg off on the ice for him to get to come off.
And that's what I'm saying. Like who's coming out of the lineup for Bellows?
There's like 1% chance that Zach Parise gets dethroned by Kieffer Bellows. Like I don't see it. He just gives
that's what I mean.
His all on every shift, and like you'd have to kill that guy to get him off the ice.
Yeah, Lamoriello made Lambert's job super easy. It's really hard to fuck with that lineup. You're literally just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic or whatever. I don't know where Bellows fits in. I have to be perfectly honest.
No, I hear that.
Someone has to go down, and then it's a guessing game. Because then it's not about where they fit in after somebody. It's really, like I said, really figuring out where he fits in after somebody goes down, not a 1-to-1. Someone's out, put him in. That just can't be how they move forward. Moving to the back end, I think I recently wrote. I don't know if it's as easy as saying Romanov Dobson as a pairing, although I can't see another way. Romanov had comments about how he's working with the puck, and that made me think maybe he'd be really good next to a guy like Mayfield. But then that second pairing, they're not going to trust somebody like Salo and Dobson to be that second pair. So maybe it's more locked in. I couldn't really decide which way to go, and it still left me questioning things a little bit. Will Romanov and Dobson be a pairing? And then what do you think about a potential third pair?
Yeah. Yes. To question one, I think Romanov and Dobson will be that pair. And I think it has to do with a couple of things here. One, just look at the age of those two. They're both 22 years old. They're literally born a day apart, which is kind of crazy. I didn't know that until after I did the research on it and was typing out their birthdays, and I was like, holy crap. But they just have the opportunity to grow and blossom together to be a prolific defensive pairing at the NHL level. Like if Dobson continues that trajectory of being that offensive defenseman, and he adds even a little bit to his defensive game, he's clear cut to be a number one at some point. Romanov look, he's and I just wrote, a 5 moments you love to see from him. Like, that guy plays with Casey Zizekas energy on the blue line, and he hits like, and this was a comparison from some broadcasters, Nicholas friggin' Cronwall. Like, that is a combination
That's
any
Islander
team wants
hockey.
on their. That's what any team wants on their blue line, and the Islanders needed that. And look, if he can add to his game, play offense more offensively than he did, and continue to be this electric on the blue line, like, you're looking at two excellent players growing together for a long time. The other thing I think of too is the Islanders were just so much better when they finally got Pelech and Pulock back together last season. That's like when things started to turn around for them. Chara was on the ice less. Green was on the ice less. They were kind of double shifting those two once Pulock could finally handle it and he was healthy. But the Islanders are just so much better when they're back together, whether they're the top, defensive pair, or, let's just say, for instance, Romanov and Dobson jumped them to the top pair. But if they're at least the second pair, whatever, if they're together, they're just so much better than they are apart.
I agree with that.
There's don't get me wrong, the possibility that Dobson can play with Pelech, and that's good. Sure, that'll be good. They're good players separately and probably together, but there's just something with the chemistry between Pelech and Pulock where they just don't even have to look. They know where each other are.
And I think Romanov and Dobson, when you kind of break it down a little bit, not only could be a future number one pair, but could be a lot like Pulock and Pelech, in so
Yeah.
much as Dobson has that offensive flair like Pulock, and Romanov has the potential to, if he works on his puck handling skills, and breaking out the puck and so on, could be a lot like Pelech. What we've seen from Pelech, and what I just wrote was, he's surprisingly good and graceful at escaping from danger, from oncoming forward checkers.
Oh yeah, he's gotten a lot better.
And it's amazing to see. Frankly, all the Islanders, Andy Green was really good at this, but all of the Islanders defensemen, they must work on that in their own zone a lot, because they really know where to go. It was very rare that once a defender not named Zdeno Chara, poor guy, a defender not named Chara got the puck, it's a really good chance that they found a way to get out of the zone.
Yeah.
I don't know about zone exits, and I haven't looked at any of the numbers, but like, just from memory, really the last few seasons, they really find a way to get out of those dangerous situations with the puck, not just throwing it blindly or anything, and not necessarily finding a partner, like owning the puck, as my coach used to say, own the puck, and they find a way to get out of the zone or find a way to move that puck into safety. So I think not only could they be a top pair, but they could be a Pelech Pulock light in Romanov and Dobson.
Yeah.
And if
with
Romanov
the potential
could
to grow past them.
Right. And yeah, eventually. And I'm thinking about like this season. I'm like keeping myself to,
that's fair.
The playoffs and whatever. I'm not going, I'm trying not to go too beyond that, because that's when we get into all this like speculative and you just like go on and on forever. I kind of want to keep myself in a certain time zone and like not jump to the trade deadline or Thanksgiving, like go like 1 week at a time, really try to analyze the stuff.
Right. So this is why we'll acquire Patrick Kane.
Oh, 100%. But I think that's one of those things. They can really look at that pairing, and that pairing can be a mentor to Dobson and Romanov, and Romanov can provide Dobson with a little more leash. I think I said that right when the signing took place, that having that kind of hard hitting, maybe not stay at home necessarily, but somebody that's going to work on their offense, and where they're hard hitting, kind of like kind of gnarly play in their own zone, could just give Dobson the rope he needs to really expand on a 51-point season.
I think Romanov's game is just what they wanted out of Zdeno Chara. He just couldn't play like that anymore.
Yeah, it was twice and then some his age.
Right.
Of course.
Right. Well, right. But that's the point, right? Like, I think that they want somebody who was defensive minded and could make that room for him on the ice. They thought it could be Chara, but he just couldn't keep the pace. And like everybody who speaks of Romanov that has watched him on a nightly basis talks about how his skating is like in the elite category. Like he's a very good skater.
Yeah.
And watching the highlights of his play and analyzing some of the big hits that he's made, like he doesn't just make big hits for the sake of making big hits. Like he'll hit a guy with purpose of taking the puck back for control. He doesn't put himself out of position. And he has the tendency to, there was this one play against Chicago where Sam Lafferty got behind both he and his defensive partner. And sure enough, he was fast enough and good enough a skater to catch up to him.
He's a big guy, right? Like, isn't he like 6'5"?
No. He's 6'1", 209.
Okay, so not here. I thought he was like this monster
But
player.
He upended Alex Pietrangelo, who's 6'3", 220. He put him on his ass. And that's the kind of player you're getting in Romanov. And these are purposeful hits. They're not just hits for the sake of hits. He knows when to throw them. And most of the time they result in then Montreal getting the puck back in possession and bringing the puck back out of the other end to the other end of the ice. And it was, I had a really good time researching some of his best plays because I think that's what you're going to see a lot of with him in this system.
On the third pair, I'll phrase the question very particularly. Is it Salo's spot to lose?
Yeah, it is.
And who's the player? Who's a player that he could lose it to? I think this is a pretty pointed answer because there's not a lot of options.
I wonder if it's a 3-player battle. I don't know how highly they have Cholowski ranked in this depth chart. Former first-round pick, highly touted prospect at one point, like said to be this prolific power play quarterback who can get just a ton of points from the blue line. Did they bring him in to play in Bridgeport or to pad that competition for the 6th spot with Aho and Salo? I think it's Salo's to lose because I think his ceiling is the highest of the 3. I think that at this point in all of their developments, he's probably the best player of the trio. But, if this could be like a last chance for Cholowski, maybe he comes in a different player, not a different player, a better player than he was with. I think he was with 3 teams so far. He was drafted by Detroit, went to Washington, or selected by Seattle. Some weird waiver wire things with Washington and Seattle going back and forth, whatever. But I mean, this largely could just be his last chance to make it in the NHL. So does he push the needle for both the Salo and Aho to be better? I think the healthy competition is going to be good for everyone.
Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely saw it as one way or another, Aho would get a little time, whether Salo's spot to lose or otherwise, where Salo would get the majority of the time, but he might just need to get eased in. He was kind of thrust into that position last year, and he played well. He obviously made some mistakes, but there were a lot of situations where he looked really good. So I figured one way or another it was Sal's spot to lose, with Aho kind of being that 7th defender, and I think he'd be okay in that role. The issue that the Islanders have, and the only one like logistically with what you said with Cholowski, is that they have 23 players on the roster. Granted, they're gonna put Panic down in Bridgeport. That adds 250. It leaves 250 of his contract of 1375, whatever 75. On the cap, and then you bring Salo up, and it's 800. So they're left with like $2.5 million or so, maybe a little bit more than that. If you're going to bring up someone like Cholowski, you have to have somebody on the IR. It just like or they're going to put somebody on waivers, and I have a hard time believing that that's going to be the case. So if Cholowski's getting a shot and it's not Salo, we will know that like immediately because they have to choose who's going to be on the roster. And I don't know what Cholowski's cap hit is in the NHL. But I imagine it's around the 750, 800K.
762, 500.
So that the math works on that for it to work and kind of maintain that little cushion for the Islanders, who by the deadline will have close to $11 million.
Yeah.
Do not ask me to explain exactly how all of that works. That's another podcast with neither of us on it. But because I don't think either of us math good. But I think we'll know really early in the season because one of the two players is going to be on the roster on the opening day roster, or opening night roster rather. So it's, to me, it's Salawaho. They don't have, I also wrote, in any other year, if this was the case, and maybe an Aho wasn't re-signed, I would fully expect a PTO veteran defender signing by Lamoriello. Issue is that they simply don't have the room. Unless they waive Aho, it's entirely possible that they go through camp and go, this isn't going to work. Like, I know they just signed him, which would be very, very silly.
Yeah.
And again, like, you just, if that was actually going to be the case, you have to shake your head again. One step forward or two steps forward with a Romanov deal and the potential that he brings, and then just like step back. And you're like, you got to be able to get out of your own way, man. Like, this is just brutal. But if he does get waived, or Bellows gets waived, or whatever the case is, and they do try to bring in a veteran defender because they're just like, we need somebody in there. Well, the Islanders back end is a lot of it's half veterans at this point. So I don't know what they need somebody else in there for to kind of manage Salo. You can even throw Aho in that to some degree, just as like if the kid needs a break, at least you can put somebody in there with Mayfield as a third pair. It's fine. That'll be all right. But it's interesting. It's, again, Lamoriello kind of like, the roster kind of is what it is. There just like are not a lot of moves that you can make. And as it stands right now, I mean, obviously, like, I don't expect Panic to be anywhere near the NHL roster unless there's like a billion injuries. I think he got 4 games last year.
I don't even think he's going to be with the Islanders organization.
Right. He was with Chicago with the Wolves. For some amount of time last year.
Won the Calder Cup.
Wow, not a big deal. That was definitely a thing to remember. I don't think he had like a whole bunch of success there. Not enough for the Islanders to be like, I wonder what he's got. Like, they just don't have the room. And again, if you're gonna, I don't know where he fits in. And it's a good thing that some of that salary is retained, because that would have been a brutal contract. Buried. It's bad enough at almost 1.4 million to just have, kind of sit around. And granted, it's only 200K on the Islanders cap if he's in Bridgeport or somewhere in the AHL. But yeah, I mean, Lamoriello just handed Lambert the roster day one and said, "This is what it's going to be." There's really not a whole lot. That's I'll let you know if there's a trade, but like, you'll hear about when everyone else does. This is it. So I don't think there's a lot of movement there. I think we're looking at the roster going into the season.
There had to be a conversation too, like, before or upon hiring him, like, this is what the roster looks like. What can you do with this? Had to be.
I'm curious. We'll never know. I am curious what that conversation was like. I don't know, like, what can you do? I don't even know if that's a fair question, because it's like, like, what kind of expectations could they possibly put on their team again? Obviously, it's win the cup, but that's what they'll say in public. But
I think it's one of those things where it's like, upon doing the interview and talking to him about, like, okay, let's look at Anthony Beauvillier. Why is he not producing? And then he gives all these reasons that, whatever they were, convinced Lamoriello, like, okay, you see it, why he's not now. I believe that you can fix it. You told me you know how to fix it, so go fix it. I think it's like one of those things.
I could see that. I don't really know what could be done. That's like more time with top players. Some of that's just between the ears with Villiers, frankly.
No, yeah, you're right. But it's just a for instance.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's not wrong. by any means. I just wonder what kind of expectations, like realistic expectations, you can put on that.
I hear you.
And how long before it doesn't work. And that's kind of where, like, I don't want to get into like what happens if they're bad by Thanksgiving again kind of conversation. It's just too early for that, and I don't feel like being depressed just like at the beginning of the season. But it's I'm sure it's a thought of a lot of people of what happens and coming and going in this, and it's you want to put more positive expectations and energy around this team simply to just erase the bad taste from last season. And that might be it. It may just be the expectations may just be kind of what they were the first Lamorello's first year and Trotz's first year. That's kind of where I'd put my expectation on this team. Just be better. You really don't have anything to lose.
Yeah.
After, they know how the fans feel about the offseason and how bad it was the previous season. Nothing to lose. Come in with a chip on your shoulder. Whole team. From management to the trainers. And everybody in between. They all play such an important role. Come in with a good positive energy. Work day by day. That's how I'm going to try to treat this season. Week to week. Day to day. It's not worth trying to look 2 months ahead and strength schedule and this it's not worth it. What do they got? How are they winning? Just like any coach trying to break it down, like win the shift. They have to do that. They have to be able to maintain their focus and not get discouraged. You kind of saw that last season. It was hard not to be. They didn't have any, the deck was stacked against them, it seemed. There was just nothing that they could do. Even when they have a 37 goal scorer, I don't know the last time that happened. In a crazy, like a Matt Barzal doesn't crack 60 points, like that's nuts.
Right.
So they have some work to do. But like we said, I think we both think they'll make the playoffs. So they just have to start like they mean to continue. Kind of come out of the. They have some homestands here. They're not going very far for a while. Let's win some goddamn hockey games.
Yep.
Is late.
It is.
I'd like to wrap this up. What do you think?
Wrap it up, baby.
All right. Please rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Nasserman Hockey. We'll try to get the Instagram going back again. I have started doing social media for work, so I've been like super not into doing even more for the podcast, but we'll figure it out. You can find James' work at the Fourth Period. You can find mine at the Hockey Writers. You can also find James at Eyes on Isles. Isles Fix is for sure coming back soon. I imagine sometime in September once training camp and the preseason begins, they'll be back. So make sure to sign up for their curated Islanders newsletter. James, bring it home.
Until next time, everybody. Let's go Islanders.